Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Claire Clinton and we're here for our November webinar and we're looking at RE and citizenship education. And as you can see, I'm not on my own today. Hooray! I have a friend alongside, someone who's joined me from sunny London. No. It's a bit grey and it's a bit dark, but this is Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, hello everybody. My name's Sarah. I've come from the Citizenship Foundation, from the Go Givers project, a Key Stage 1 and 2 project from the Citizenship Foundation, and I'm here to talk about the citizenship dimension today.
That's brilliant. Brilliant news for all of you. So if you've had a hard day teaching today, we just say, okay, breathe in,
relax.
Breathe out, relax. Hopefully, we can take us through some thinking about RE and citizenship education.
Absolutely.
And how we can have these interfaith dialogues in school and really help pupils in their development socially, morally, culturally, and spiritually. Yes, so that's great. So very, very welcome. Now, just to do a bit of housekeeping, if you are seeing Sarah and I at the moment, you will see just below us on your right, there is a box where you can ask any question. And no question is too silly a question to ask us.
Please feel free to pose anything to us.
Whether we know the answer to it or not is another matter, but please ask your questions. And if we don't know, we'll go away and we'll ask other people who do know and we'll come back to you. So please do send those in at any point. And because I have a wonderful assistant who's out of sight at the moment, but she is here, and all the questions come to her and she just passes them to us. So if we're saying something and you want some clarification, you can always just send that in and say, can you repeat that? Or I didn't understand what you meant by that. And we'll do that. And you may have questions about your setting at the end. So please do send them in. Now, on the left of the screen, where you can see Sarah and myself, there is a point where you can download the PowerPoint that we've prepared, which was really just to give you something that you might want to annotate as we go through and have our discussion. We're not going to talk to every point on there, but we hope that those points will be something that helps you, maybe if you want to share to your line manager or to other teachers in your school, or for just for your own professional development. So we're very grateful to Interfaith Explorers and the Maimonides Foundation who sponsor and put all of this on for us. And for you guys, without charging, it's a wonderful facility for us as professionals to think through some important issues. And particularly if we're a primary specialist today, that we're thinking about how can we embed citizenship education, because we know the primary day is always full and there's always a lot that we need to do.
Yeah, very squeezed curriculum, absolutely.
And citizenship could get squeezed, as can RE. And so we want to look at how you can put the two things together and hopefully find a bit of time, a bit of synergy between them, and that will help your school. So, welcome. You see, just breathing, and now we'll get on with some information. Okay. So the Maimonides Foundation is supported by UNESCO. And so this is a resource. I know people watch this from around the world, Sarah.
Fantastic.
Oh, yes. In Canada and Africa and in Asia. So, yeah, to our global viewers, welcome. Hello. In England, it's very cold now. Very cold and
you not
dark.
Want to be in London.
You've probably got nicer weather than us. So I'm Claire Clinton. As most of you know, I'm an RE advisor in the London Borough of Newham, which is the most diverse borough in the UK. I say this every time, so some of you will know what I'm about to say or have just said. And as I said, this is Sarah. Sarah.
No problem. Easy mistake, easy mistake.
And I'm really pleased that she's with us today, just to help me think through a little bit about citizenship education, because my expertise really is in the RE. Yeah. And it's great because Sarah's expertise is in citizenship. So together, this should be good. So we've got some objectives for today, and I'm just going to run those through with you. So we said we're going to look at how RE can promote citizenship education and understand how it can benefit your pupils and embed those fundamental British values. And there's a lot at the moment about these fundamental British values, Sarah.
Absolutely. British values agenda sits within SMSC, so your spiritual, moral, social and cultural aspects of learning. British values is a small but very important part of your SMSC ethos and development and provision within your school. So yeah, we're talking about that today.
We'll talk about that a little bit more, and it's important because it's one of the statements that Ofsted will come in and look at, and the new framework that we've had since September has placed an even greater emphasis on this spiritual, moral, social, cultural development of pupils. And of course that's happening through all subjects, from the moment we greet them in the playground to when we hand them back to their parents and carers at the end of the day. We're doing all of those things, whether we're doing maths or English, but we know that RE and citizenship and some other subjects like art and music, PSHE, have a greater role because they're hitting all four at the same time often. Yes. Some subjects might just be hitting social development, but these subjects together hit all four. And they're even mentioned to Ofsted inspectors as places to look, just to see how a school is going on their SMSC.
Yeah, and Ofsted is placing a great emphasis and importance on SMSC aspects of learning. And if your SMSC provision is judged as requiring improvement or even inadequate, it can negatively impact on the other four key judgments as part of your Ofsted inspection. So Ofsted are recognising its importance, even though it is a very squeezed curriculum. It is worth putting that time in to this part of the curriculum.
Yeah, and the bit that I like from the fundamental British values in the Ofsted handbook, when it talks about it, is the bit where it talks about that what we're trying to do as a school is get children ready to participate and contribute positively to life in modern Britain. And why would we be a teacher if we weren't about wanting pupils to develop and to be their very best and to find their place in this world? And whatever society they choose to be a part of, whether it's here in Britain or elsewhere, that we hope these British values will help them to be able to be positive contributors into community and into society. So it's the reason, I think it's the deep motivation why a lot of teachers are teachers. We just sometimes don't dwell too much on it.
Or you're not allowing yourself that space, or you don't feel that you have that space to dwell on it and to think about those issues. So
okay, so what is citizenship education?
The important question.
The expert.
What is citizenship education? Well, citizenship education is putting that learning in the broader context of society. So it's thinking about broader societal issues and your place as an individual within the broader society. How do you relate? How do your pupils relate to their local communities, their school communities, national and global communities? So citizenship allows that space to explore those broader issues, including moral issues, sensitive and controversial issues and current affairs. And an important part of citizenship education is not only building a knowledge base, but it's providing children with the skills in order to be active citizens. So it's not only about learning about the rudiments of democracy, for example, but it's how do you do democracy? How do you become an active citizen? How do you exercise your voice in society?
And make changes. The changes maybe you want to see.
So how can you be the change you want to see in the world, as Andy said? So it's the active component as well as that knowledge base.
Understanding it.
So if you look at the relationship between PSHE, RE and citizenship, I like to look at this on a continuum. So if you think about on one side, the far side, you'd have the personal dimension, reflecting on yourself, your beliefs, your feelings, your values. And then in the centre, you'd have the social dimension. So looking at yourself in relation to others, your peers, your classmates, your teacher, your family. And then on the far end of that scale, you have the societal dimension. Now that's where that citizenship learning really comes in. So for example, if you're looking at the topic of rights, the personal would personal dimension would look at your rights as a human being.
Yeah.
The social would look at your rights in relation to the rights of others, respecting other people's rights. And then the societal dimension would look at times in history where the rights of groups of people have been denied.
Yes.
And so looking at broader conflicts in society.
And the impact of those as well.
Yeah.
And then how society's at the place it is, because it often is because of the history that we've had in certain countries, that certain things matter to us, and it's because battles have been fought over certain things.
And we're still fighting.
Yes.
And I think that's an important point, especially when you come to teach about the rule of law. We might not be there yet. We're still working towards a fairer society, and children should hopefully recognise their agency in that fight, in that process for change and working towards a fairer society as well.
And so lots of schools have a lot of this already embedded into your system, because you'll run things like a school council, for instance, and pupils are standing for election, they're putting forward the reason why they would be the right candidate, there's a vote going on, they're being elected. I know a number of schools around me had head boys and head girls, particularly in primary last year, because they were wanting to link in with the general election. And so they wanted to have that feel of, we're going to vote for somebody who will be the person over all the school, a bit like, as it turned out, David Cameron would be the Prime Minister. And so lots of schools were doing that last year. And for pupils to understand that when they bring something up to their school council rep, that needs to go forward. These systems aren't always perfect, but as we say, we're trying to get things in place so that pupil voice makes a difference. And their understanding that they have not ultimate power, but there are ways of putting things forward and getting adults to look at things and reassess things and think about things, and that can mean change.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also about trying to ensure that as many children as possible in school can exercise their pupil voice. Have a look at your school council. Is it perhaps made up of the usual suspects? There's children perhaps who already have those skills and that confidence. Are there any other ways that you can involve other children, perhaps developing other subcommittees such as a charity council or eco council, or making sure that children are regularly encouraged to pop their notes, their questions, their queries into a box in the classroom that will be fed back to their representatives. So to make it as inclusive as possible.
That's really important. Now, you'll see on the next slide, we talk a little bit about some obvious links for us between citizenship and RE. So we've already mentioned some of those about laws and rights and responsibilities, because within every religion, there are ways of doing things and ways we don't think things should be done. What's interesting is when you have within the same faith, many different ways of doing things, as we do within different streams and denominations. But also this question about what matters to us and what matters to our society. And religions make up society. And so whether you're in a very religious place like we are physically today in Newham, or whether you're somewhere like where I grew up on the Isle of Wight, which really wasn't religious at all, both of those have an impact to how people with faith or without feel in certain areas, and whether they feel they're being listened to or not, and who they feel is things are fair or not fair. And so it's getting children to feel empowered to be able to ask questions and to look at things as well. That's so important, isn't it? And not just to accept the status quo, because we're not often at the perfect place, as Sarah said earlier. We're working towards the way we would like to see society. Also, obviously, we talk about culture and religion. And, you know, I was, on Tuesday, I was taking a group of teachers around different places of worship. And we went to a Jewish synagogue, and it was a Reform synagogue. And I sort of quickly said, well, there's sort of three main types of denominations, sort of liberal, Reform and Orthodox. And the rabbi sort of very nicely said, well, yes, but then there's about 8, and then sort of gave me the full list. And actually what a lot of those different streams are about, yes, how you interpret things today, how you read things today, but it's also about culture, and it's about tradition.
Yeah. And often it's difficult to distill a religious belief from culture and tradition. Yes. And I think a really important point there is that there's difference within difference. Even in a monocultural school setting, there is difference there.
Yeah. And we want to appreciate that, and that links so well with SMSC as well. So we also mentioned about beliefs and beliefs being put into action, and I know a lot of RE syllabi around the country have that question about how do people put beliefs into actions, because we're trying to link up with citizenship, because we can see that's an important thing to bring together. Okay, so if we're thinking about promoting citizenship in RE, what would be some of the important things you would say, Sarah, that we should try and do?
I think it's around celebrating the similarities which unite people of different faiths and of no faith, and the differences that enrich us, and ensuring that everyone in the class feels belonging to the whole, and that difference is celebrated at school.
Yes.
Another way in which you can use citizenship to promote RE and those key values is through social action projects. And a social action project is where children work together to implement action to make a difference in their local community, or it can be to make a difference on a global issue.
Absolutely.
So looking at logical approaches that really put children in the driving seat of their learning, giving children the opportunity to democratically elect issues that they feel passionate about, to exercise those skills in critical thinking and in empathy, to put themselves in the shoes of others. For example, looking at maybe homelessness in your local area, or senior citizens, and maybe being friends to other people in the local area, befriending senior citizen homes, for example.
And there's an opportunity coming up with Christmas, and again, there's always seasonal opportunities that come up. I remember some of my students, when I was full-time in school, deciding that they wanted to do something for a home that was very near to our school, where it had a lot of elderly people but with learning disabilities, and so the kids found that quite fascinating, that though these people were older than them, sometimes in terms of their mental development they were younger than them.
There's a real connection there.
And we used to go in sort of at different points of the year and lead different things and do quizzes and all sorts of things and bring in silly prizes which would get all the residents very excited. But the fact that they had visitors who came in and that they came in regularly made a big difference to those people and built up relationships with the students. And I think it really helped my students in their empathy skills. I know this was at secondary, but I think it would apply as much at primary, in their empathy skills, but also in their life skills of being able to handle and know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and to feel comfortable around difference, and not scared of it. And all of those things are really important, but it came from then. It came from that they'd seen these people around, and they didn't know quite how to handle it, and then we looked at what we could do maybe to make a difference. So, you know, really practical things. I was saying to Sarah that I was working with a school this morning, and they were looking to apply now for their RE quality mark, which is a great way of helping you think through your RE in a school. And they were talking about food banks and how one of their examples, because it asks, how are you making RE linked to your local community and making a positive difference? And so the groups in year 5 and year 2 had both taken on a food bank project, a bit like a homeless project or something like that. And the kids had been bringing things in, and then had a huge, I suppose, gratification at knowing that what they'd given had made a difference to someone's life.
Yeah, and it's very really empowering, recognizing your agency and your ability to affect change, and also being introduced to democratic channels. For example, if you're frustrated about a local park that's in disrepair, what do you do about that? Connect with your councillor, your local MP, lobby, actually upskill children in how to affect change, and that it's not only about fundraising. That's a very important part of affecting change, but there are also other dimensions. Go-Givers run a project called the Make a Difference Challenge, which is a social action project, and we run that in many areas of the country to provide that skills and training for teachers in actually how to run a child-led project.
Brilliant.
Really successful.
Okay, and at the end of our PowerPoint, there's some details of where to get to Sarah and the others who also look after the Go-Givers project. And just to say that there are some charges around some of those materials. They're good, well thought out, planned for teachers, and to be a teacher member within the Citizenship Foundation and the Go-Givers stuff, I think it's about £25 a year.
So for an individual,
not very much.
No, it's not. Prices are subsidised so that we can make it as accessible as possible to as many teachers as possible. We're a non-for-profit organisation. So yeah, we have a range of packages, and a whole school package starts at £140 and premium package at £330. So it's very reasonable, gives you access to a range of citizenship resources.
Brilliant. Okay, so you can go and find some more practical things. If you're looking for practical things that you can start using and helps you with that pedagogy, as Sarah's been talking about, of going from theory to practice and making change and empowering children and young people, then this is somewhere that I would recommend. That's a really good resource that you can make use of. And it's very reasonable. If you don't understand CPD prices, you won't know how cheap that is. But let me tell you, I'm a lot more expensive than that. So, okay, moving on. Very good value. So just thinking a little bit more about promoting citizenship through our RE, we can take things like the golden law of treating others the way we would like to be treated. We can look at how actually that's a fundamental thing within our British law system, actually, and it goes back to a sort of Christian and Jewish history within the country, but also that law is very important in lots of other religions as well as in humanism. So though it starts in a sort of Judeo-Christian setting, it's not a law that puts anybody, or a rule that puts anybody outside. And people agree with it generally. That's the way they want to live and be treated.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant starting point for discussions around inclusivity and those points that really enrich us. So yeah, it's a really good starting point.
Okay, and on the Interfaith Explorers website itself, there are some materials that you can download and use within your lessons that really help to encourage that critical thinking around evidence. There's a lovely activity on there on prayer, and it takes a Muslim prayer, a Christian prayer, and a Jewish prayer, and it's getting children to see what's similar and different, what's in common. What's not the same, and I think that would be a really good start to thinking about important characteristics for these people. Okay, what are my important things? How do I sum that up? Okay, how do we respect one another? And looking at that golden rule through that prayer, I think would be quite good. Also, asking pupils where they stand on different issues is really helpful. And whether that's a controversial issue or a less controversial issue. There's some really good guidance that when we had the Qualifications Curriculum Authority, QCA, that changed to QCDA, and anyway, before that was SCAR. Those of you who are really old in education, you'll even remember that acronym. If you're in another country, this means nothing to you. But if you go to gov.uk, you can still look for how to handle controversial issues in the classroom. Brilliant. And I was part of some people that helped with the feedback and the editing around that piece of work, which was done via PSHE and Citizenship and and RE, because all of those subjects are handling controversial issues.
Yeah.
And sometimes teachers back away from that. We back away because we don't want to offend, we don't want to do the wrong thing. We don't want to cause unnecessarily upset, and that's extra work for us.
Yes.
But actually, if we don't hit and know how to handle controversial issues, it doesn't prepare our pupils for life in British society.
Yeah.
So we've got to. And I would just say, go back and have a look at some of the other webinars where we've looked at how we handle those different issues in the classroom, and do interfaith conversations. And if you want some pointers of how to start on that, go back to those webinars. That they were right at the start of the series. You'll find them at the bottom of the list, but really good in terms of foundation of how do I start doing this in my classroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's all about building up those skills in critical thinking, giving children evidence, different viewpoints, and giving children the opportunity to form their views based on the evidence presented, and also for children to come to that realization that yes, you can change your mind.
Absolutely.
You can begin a class discussion with one point in your head, a very strong opinion, and you can leave with that opinion changed.
I annoy people with that. I'm very like that. I annoy my husband particularly with that one, because I work out what I think by speaking things out. Other people work it out through thinking. And
I do the same.
Yes. So my husband thinks it all through and only says when he's got to a reasoned point of view, whereas I'm all over the place. I change my ideas, and in the end I get to it, but it's a bit of a journey. Yes. Yeah. And some children are like me, and some children are the other way around, and we have to cater for both and understand both and allow children to change their minds.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah. And it's a really crucial learning outcome to be able to go through that process of changing your mind.
Because it means you're listening and you're thinking, doesn't it? These critical thinking skills that we're talking about. We're doing analysis, aren't we? We're doing application. We're doing some synthesis and some evaluation. And so we're right at the top of those higher order things, skills when we're doing that, when we're allowing people to challenge us and we're being challenged. And it's important. It's important that we know how to challenge pupils appropriately, not aggressively. It always helps, I say, if you can do anything with a smile. And so even when I'm saying to a pupil, okay, hang on a moment, I think you need to think about that, I'll still do it in a very upbeat way, because I think if I look stern and if I look shocked, then that can stop them sometimes from feeling that ability to be part of the conversation. And that's what we're doing. We're having a conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's just also important to appreciate the fact that as public educators, we have to remain neutral. Yeah. And we're not in that role as a private citizen when we're teaching our pupils. We are a public educator. We have to remain neutral, and we can't let the odd smirk get in the way.
Absolutely. Okay, so the next sort of things that we're talking about is citizenship and fundamental British values. But I'm seeing the time. I knew this would happen. You see, we're having far too good a time talking through things. So we've talked already about the important duty that schools have got around these fundamental British values. And actually, they're very key for citizenship education, because they're all flowing everything we do through democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, mutual respect and tolerance. Not everybody likes the word tolerance because it sort of feels a slightly negative word.
Yeah.
But behind it, I think when tolerance is done properly, it is that ability to be sat next to somebody that you don't agree with, but actually can get alongside. And that's real tolerance. And I think that is quite a hard skill. It's not seething next to somebody and pushing up with somebody.
It's a really important distinction to make. Actually, to achieve real tolerance can be quite tough. Especially if you really don't agree with someone. Absolutely. It's a really, really hard thing. So in terms of citizenship and fundamental British values, if I had to make you say your top point from the things in the PowerPoint, the teachers can go and read through the things we're saying. What would be your
most important thing for them to take on board at the moment?
I think it would be to take on board the fact that British values is not reductive. It's not prescribing a set of values that the state is asking you to promote, which might undermine plurality of opinion in a classroom. British values is best looked at as an ethical framework which allows the plurality of belief, of opinion to flourish, but also gives those parameters to ensure that we can all live safe and happy lives. So rather than undermining that difference that we have in modern Britain, it's actually saying we need the rule of law to protect and to nourish our plurality, which is really precious and part of life in modern Britain.
And I think if you can get past the fact that the government has called it fundamental, and at the same time they're telling us fundamentalism is wrong, if you can handle those two things, if you can get past the fact that there are values, but actually 3 out of the 5 are not values, they're systems, but behind them lies this treat others the way you would like to be treated, and the importance of individuals, that is a philosophical belief system, that we believe every individual matters, and that's central to what makes Britain Britain. Now, that's not saying that that's not central to other cultures and other countries.
Really important.
They are not exclusively British values, but they happen to be values that we have in Britain. And the government, and as Sarah said, as teachers, we are the arms and the mouthpiece of the government. That's who pays our salary. And what they're saying is they want children to understand the importance of these things that make our society the way it is, and why actually we don't like unfairness. And when we find out that people have cheated systems and paid people off, we get outraged. We don't like it, and it's because we have some equalities, sort of belief system right at the centre. It doesn't matter whether we're rich or poor, it doesn't matter what culture we're from, it doesn't matter what religion we're from. There are some of those shared values, aren't there?
Absolutely.
And that's what we're getting to explore with pupils. So you just have to get past the title, is what I'm saying to teachers, because behind it is worth some stuff, and it's important stuff about community cohesion, it's about plurality, it's about how we live together, and it's about how we have a society that can continue to get better and think through issues as issues come up. Now, towards the end of the PowerPoint slide, I'm just going to go on. Sarah has shared sort of 3 forms, haven't you, of looking at sort of our plural identity, really, isn't it?
And
do you want to explain?
So this is about giving children, young people, the opportunity to picture their identities, to look at their multiple identities, and to feel happy about having multiple identities, and to feel a sense of belonging. Got a few different ways that you can show that as a mind map, picturing your different identities.
So that's on the first slide, isn't it?
So the slide following that is a funnel. Look at it as lots of different marbles going into that funnel, and out at the end pops a global citizen. So all those values, all those beliefs, it's my favourite as well.
The one I like.
All those aspects of you, the experience that makes you the global citizen that you are. And the last one there is the onion that is me. So looking at those layers that make up each individual. And an important point here is that if you're looking at these and thinking that they are not suitable for your context, maybe if you're in a very monocultural white setting, an important point to make is that all children are different. All children are different, even if on the surface it looks like your class shares similar cultural background. We perform different identities when we're a daughter, when we are a scout, maybe a brownie, a chorister. the different activities that we do. Some of our identities we opt into, and some of them are given to us. So it's about children exploring that we perform different identities in different settings and contexts. We're different with our peers than maybe we are at home or with our teachers.
That's right, and I think it's just as relevant an activity as you say, whether you're in a monocultural situation or a very diverse cultural situation. One of the lessons that I was doing last year in a lot of schools was around tolerance and around fundamental British values. And what surprised me was pupils who have a number of cultural identities, yet not really understanding that they were British as well. So they sort of knew that they were Ghanaian and, I don't know, French or whatever, but they'd been born here. And they hadn't really picked up on the fact that they were British as well. Because, of course, what they're doing is they're understanding their parents' cultural identity. They're not understanding that they maybe add a new element to that cultural identity, and they're forging something new. And the kids were so excited when they sussed that they did belong here, that they were part of here, that it wasn't that they were some interloper. They were Britain. And that's quite an interesting concept to unpack with children and young people, isn't it?
And I think it's really crucial to ensuring that school is inclusive and that children feel a sense of belonging and feel comfortable in that space.
Okay. Now, I know that you had 3 or 4 activities that you were thinking of from particularly some of the stuff in Go Givers that we could use to sort of bring RE and citizenship together. And one of those was the mind maze. Can you just talk us? We're into our last 4 minutes, everyone. So hang on, but there might be some tips here for some practical things that you can do in your classroom.
So mind maze is a really short activity that you can use as part of circle time, a very short discussion activity, and it's giving children scenarios and asking them what their view is on those scenarios. For example, should animals have rights? Does that apply to all animals? Is war ever justified? Is it wrong to bully bullies? So moral dilemmas, and asking children to talk through those and to critically assess where they stand on those issues.
And something we do quite a lot at secondary is those sort of mind mazes, but there's a silent discussion. We've got usually better literacy skills, and we'll have that question in the middle of a piece of paper, and each child has a different coloured pen, and you usually have more than one question on a table, and kids start at one table and they're writing their discussion and they can come in and challenge people, but it's amazing what will come out of a discussion like that, because everybody can talk at the same time, as opposed to sometimes that format of waiting. And so if you're secondary, you might look to have one of those silent discussions. There's lots of things online about it. I'm sure you'll find it. So another one was Pandora.
So drawing on the ancient Greek myth, Pandora opens her box and it releases all the evils of the world. In the second opening, she finds that beacon of hope in that box and is asking children, what are your hopes for the world? And drawing on that important element of hope. So and also drawing on the use of stories from a range of cultures and traditions, religious traditions and cultural traditions, as a way to look at different values.
So we were mentioning the Korean one with the chopsticks,
the story of...
do you know that one? We'll tell it to you quickly in case you don't.
So a Korean warrior, he's on his way to heaven. He's at the gates of heaven, and he wants to have a look at hell. So the gatekeeper takes him to hell. He sees a feast of a table laden with food, but everybody in hell looks really gaunt. He's thinking, why is this? He sees that people are given chopsticks which are 2 meters long,
so really long
chopsticks, and they just simply can't use these chopsticks
the food
to feed themselves. They can't feed themselves, hence why they're looking so gaunt, and there's this enormous feast. So he says, okay, take me to heaven. He goes to heaven and sees exactly the same scenario. There is a table laden with food. But here, people don't look gaunt, they look really well fed. They still have those 2-meter chopsticks, and he thinks, well, how can this be? How can this be? And then he looks and he notices that people are feeding each other. Feeding each other. So people are helping each other. So the story looks at how can we make heaven or hell on earth? What role does cooperation play there? And the problem of selfishness as well. It's a really lovely parable.
Lovely story that we can use. So just wrapping up, we were saying some really useful resources. You can find them on Interfaith Explorers. There's a guide to help children think through making choices, and looks at if they go this way, what the next step is, and they might want to come back and go another way and make a different choice. So it's quite a nice little map that gets them thinking through their choices. There's also some advice on there about dealing with difficult issues in the classroom. And again, I would suggest for your own CPD, if you haven't already read that, then that's a really good thing. It will give you confidence to deal with difficult issues. There's also some top tips on there that says about being a responsible citizen and what that looks like. And we've also got the I can statements on there that are putting into pupil speak their statements of progression, so that we look at those from sort of step 1 to step 6. It used to be level 1 to level 6, but we don't talk about levels anymore, so we just talk about steps to progression. But you might find that language really useful in terms of planning for citizenship and RE together, because it will show you those higher order things, that thinking skills that the children need to be doing to really push on. And so I always try and get a level 5 question if I'm working with year 6s somewhere into that unit of work, into that lesson, because it will challenge them to think differently than just your level 3 or level 4 questions. And if you do have gifted and talented pupils, then a level 6 question, which is why we've done those I cans as well for you, just will again help them to push them on.
Fantastic resource.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I told you time would fly, didn't I?
And it has. It really has.
Thank you very much for being with us today. And as we said, if you've got any question, then you can email it right now, and Sarah and I will email back to you, and we might put a whole series of those answers onto the website. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good Christmas season when you get there. I know December will be fast and busy in school, but yes, we will see you in the new year, and thanks very much for listening. Bye.
Bye.